Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Levi, and today we are talking about It Starts With Us, which is the sequel to It Ends With Us. I read It Ends With Us, and I had a lot of people wanting me to read It Starts With Us because you hate me. So I did read it. Thankfully, it was shorter than It Ends With Us, and had substantially less going on. But first, let's talk about the obvious. I have a microphone. I've had this microphone for a really long time, but because I film on my phone, I haven't been able to use it. I found out that Apple makes this dongle that lets you connect USB to the lightning cable, which is exactly what I'm doing. Note number 2 is that while I was reading this book, I found out that Colleen Hoover's son is also named Levi, and we are the same age, like almost exactly, like even born within the same month. And not only that, it's the same son who is accused of sexually harassing and soliciting a minor. I definitely don't like that. So here's what I'm going to say. I think that we should fight, and I do need 10 minutes alone in a room with him, and it will not be in heaven. And will I get my ass beat? Probably. But dear God, I will go down swinging. I will. I swear. All right, without further ado, let's get into the actual review. So there's another author's note at the beginning of this book, and it talks about like her love for TikTok and how TikTok like made this book absolutely shoot off, and how she never intended to write a sequel because she didn't want to write about Lily being in pain, but people wanted the sequel to be about Lily and Atlas and like having a good life together. So she never intended to write a sequel, and I think that is very obvious when it comes to the plot of this book. So there's no time lapse between when the last book ends in the epilogue and like when this book starts. It's literally like 10 minutes later, and we are toggling between Lily and Atlas's point of view now, and a lot of this book is just not really anything going on, and the rest is not good. So we immediately start off with Atlas, and Atlas is like, oh my God, I can't believe I ran into her again. And he goes to work and he finds out that his restaurant has been vandalized, and the person who has vandalized it has tagged it with the word asshole, but has spelled it asshole as in like whole circle. And he's like, wow, that's so funny. Like my mother always used to say it like it was 2 words, like ass hole. I would pay attention to that because it is foreshadowing or for opaquing, whichever term you want to use. We find out that the book is toggling between Atlas's point of view and Lily's point of view. So then we go back to Lily, who is basically recapping everything between the last chapter and the epilogue of It Ends With Us, because there's like a 9-month or year-long gap or whatever between the last chapter and the epilogue, and we're going over what's happened within those 9 months. So we find out that Ryle and Lily are happily co-parenting, and Ryle has Emmy, which is their daughter, for like 2 to 3 times a week. And these visits are unsupervised, by the way. They are straight up unsupervised. She just lets the kid go to Ryle and is like, okay, bye. And then we start to delve into like the main problem of the book, which is Lily wants to date Atlas, but she's not sure how Ryle will react because she knows that Ryle hates Atlas. And so she's very worried about him finding out like that they're together and his reaction, if he'll retaliate against her by using Emmy, like all this sorts of stuff. And it's like, oh, and you let him be alone with her? Okay. And then we also find out that Lily doesn't let Ryle have overnights with Emmy. He only lets her watch her during the day because apparently abuse only happens at night. And we find out the reason why she doesn't want Emmy having overnights is because she wants to wait until Emmy can talk so she can tell Lily if anything happens while she's like overnight alone with her father. And we'll get into this later because, oh my God, there's so many things wrong with that statement. So in my opinion, Ryle should not be there. He should not be in the child's life. He should not be within 20 feet of Lily and her daughter. But that's neither here nor there, and we will go into that idea later. But Lily is very overwhelmed over everything that's happening. She is like unsure how to process all of it. She's bumped back into Atlas. She wants to be part of his life. They've agreed to start dating each other. She also doesn't like the fact that she'll have to tell Ryle eventually. She's really stressed out about it. She's stressed out about his response. She's stressed out about work, and she doesn't really know how to process all of this. And I shit you not, this is what she does. She goes to her car, she picks up a legal notepad, and she writes, "Dear Ellen." Yeah, we bring that back for the sequel. Dear fucking God. Even after This is after, by the way, because this book came out in like 2019 or something. I don't know, maybe even later. This is after we found out how much of a shitty person Ellen is and that she's actually quite abusive to her staff. And Colleen Hoover still went in with the "Hi, Ellen." She talks about how she's happy she ended the cycle of abuse and she wants to move on, but she's still like scared of Ryle, which is like, why do you have him in your life then? Why are you co-parenting? And furthermore, you're happy you ended the cycle of abuse, and yet you are letting your daughter spend unsupervised time with and be socialized by an abuser. Within the letter, we figure out what happened, in the courtroom between Lily and Ryle when it came to custody. And as soon as she broke out that legal talk, it was very clear that Miss Hoover had never once opened Google and looked at Massachusetts state law. And it really concerns me that this is somebody who used to be a social worker, because, dear God, the social work in this book, not good. So Lily starts to detail the custody agreement and what happened in the courtroom between her and Ryle in regards to custody of Emerson. Now, here's the thing to know about family law. I'm not an expert in family law. This is just like, some Googling. One, the term custody has two legal meanings. The first one is physical custody, and then the second one is legal custody. You could be a parent with sole physical custody and 50% legal custody, meaning if your kid needs, say, a surgery, you and the other parent have to agree, but the kid is always within your physical care. When people say sole custody, that usually means they have 100% legal custody, 100% physical custody. It's very important to note, I don't think Colleen Hoover knows these things. Neither of those things were taken into mind when creating the custody battle between Lily and Ryle. So Lily did not bring evidence of the abuse into court for some dumbass fucking reason. She says she doesn't want to drag the worst of their relationship into a courtroom, even though that's quite literally what custody battles are for. And then the second reason why she doesn't have full custody is that her fuck-ass lawyer, who should be disbarred, said that Lily wouldn't win because Ryle doesn't have any strikes on his record, has never been arrested, and makes more money than she does. Okay, let's back up to the evidence that Lily would have had, okay? She not only has a hospital record of her abuse, she has a witness, which is Atlas, a nurse witness, a medical witness, which was the nurse that tended to her, and then also a character witness and Ryle's own sister, who said she would testify for Lily if she needed to in the last book. Also, Ryle is a neurosurgeon, which means he leads a very unstable life, not unstable in he's also unstable, but his amount of free time and his schedule is very unstable, which is not favored by the courts. Courts favor mothers even though they're not supposed to, but Lily still has a strong support system, a steady income, and a stable career, as well as a stable schedule. So I think she would have won that hands down. And her lawyer sucks. But Colleen Hoover needed a reason for Ryle to still be involved. So anyway, they decided to not go through the court at all, and they settled out of court with their lawyers, where Ryle has Emmy 2 to 3 times a week. And it's important to note that Lily says she has full custody later in the book, but still has to give Ryle Lily 2 to 3 times a week because of their agreement. And I just want to say to that, hey bud, that's quite literally the definition of joint custody. And what's crazy about the whole overnight thing that would get her in trouble with Massachusetts law is that she would rather risk her daughter getting hurt than take preventative measures to make sure it doesn't happen at all. And if you had mentioned the abuse in the courtroom, this would not have happened. But no, she would rather risk her daughter being hurt than have full custody over her. The next chapter, we move on. We're in Atlas's point of view. Nothing really happens except he has been tagged again, and this time it says his name, but it's spelled like Atlas, like ASS at the end of his name. And there's actually nothing important about this chapter except that he figures out the tagger is a kid who seems to be in their early teens. And Atlas laughs at the cleverness of Atlas. This is a grown man, by the way, who has been in the military. Okay, the next chapter, we find out that Alyssa and Marshall, who is Alyssa's husband, and Ryle's best friend, have remained friends with Ryle. And Alyssa is still very close with her brother, and they just don't interact at the same time. So, she either hangs out with Ryle or she hangs out with Lily. And that's insane to me. You find out that your brother is domestically abusing his wife, and you're still yeah, we can be brothers. Hello. And I know Colleen Hoover wanted to make some of this like still feel real. That's not how real people react. Just by the way, real people react like James Charles's brother, and they go no contact, which I think we should have maybe done here. Throughout the book, the issues basically persist with Atlas trying to figure out who the tagger is, and then Lily also trying to figure out a way to break to Ryle the fact that she's dating Atlas. And it just keeps continuing, and we find out that Lily wants to modify the custody agreement, and we'll get into that later. Lily falls asleep on their first date, which of course Atlas thinks is really cute. And in a sign of like trust and solidarity, basically, Lily agrees to let Atlas read her journals. This is obviously supposed to be a mirror of how Ryle just took that information, but in a sign of trust, Lily actually gives Atlas her old journals so he can read them. This also has nothing to do with the plot, but instead of curse, Atlas says cuss, which is extremely southern, and they're not even from the South. Both Lily and Atlas are from one of the most northern points in the United States of America. They are both from Maine. So it's very small, very nitpicky, but I just thought that was funny. So Lily and Atlas are attempting to like get to know one each other better. They are talking about their childhoods, and Lily brings up the fact, I missed you a lot when you went to go live with your uncle in Boston. And this is when Atlas drops the bomb that his uncle actually died when he was 9, and he lied. He didn't go live with his uncle in Boston. He was simply escaping to Boston because they had more shelters and they had more resources, and he was going to wait there until he enlisted in the army, which is exactly what he did. And he didn't want to tell Lily because he didn't want to worry her. So this is all continuing. Atlas and Lily are starting to get to know each other better, like as adults, but an undercurrent of the book is that Ryle wants more time with Emmy, and he still is hanging on to this hope that he and Lily can get back together. And so things are starting to get more tense. He knows now that she's seeing Atlas, like he sees her getting dressed up for a date and he gets pissed off, and we know that it's because he wants more time with Emmy, because he still thinks he and Lily can get back together. Lily agrees to go on another date with Atlas, and she goes to Alyssa to like drop off Emmy, who's watching her for the night. And Alyssa starts to make talk about Atlas in front of Marshall, knowing that Marshall is Ryle's best friend still after all of this. So then Lily gets a little uncomfortable talking about the situation in front of him, because what if he goes to tell Ryle? And Alyssa says, oh, don't worry, he's very good at being neutral. Back up, please. Neutral about what, Alyssa? Neutral about what? Neutral about abuse? You should not be neutral about abuse. We should all know that that is a bad thing, and that the abuser is not a good person, and you should not remain friends with them. That sentence was just absolutely insane to me. Neutral about the fact that he used to hit his wife and attempted to sexually assault her? Neutral about that? Why are we being neutral? We should not be being neutral. Okay, so moving on from Marshall being neutral about abuse, we find out after a few chapters of tagging and like going back and forth that the tagging is being done by this 13-year-old who claims he's Atlas's brother. So in this book, we get more glimpses into the past of Atlas's life. We find out the exact reasons why he left home, and his mother, a woman named Sutton, was married to this guy named Tim, and Tim just didn't like Atlas, probably saw him as a threat. And before leaving for Boston, Atlas tried to go home to like mend things at home, and his mother essentially threw him out and was like, you can't be here. And we find out now that she was pregnant while she did all of that, and Atlas has a 13-year-old brother that he did not know about. The catch is Sutton, who is their mother, made the 13-year-old brother, whose name is Josh, think that Atlas knew about him and didn't want anything to do with him. So Josh runs away from home, and he's really upset, and he's pissed that his brother seems to be successful and wants nothing to do with him. Atlas catches him, finds out he's homeless, immediately takes him in, and is basically like, I didn't know about you. Like, I promise I didn't know about you. If I did, I would have come for you, and stuff like that. So it's like basically a family reunion. And then legally, Atlas has to give Josh back to their mother, because basically if she calls the cops, legally he's technically kidnapped this kid, even if the kid has gone willingly. So he's like, listen, I want to fight for custody for you. And he's like, don't worry, I'm going to come get you as soon as I can. Like, he reported all this stuff to CPS, and he's like, I'm going to come get you. So he goes to give Josh back to Sutton, and then witnesses Sutton hit Josh, and he's immediately like, no, I can't do it. Like, come for me if you want, but I'm not going to leave this kid in the hands of that woman. And so he takes Josh back to his apartment and starts the custody battle. So that's all in Atlas at the moment. And then we jump back to Lily. So like I said, Ryle has found out about Lily dating Atlas. He's not happy with it. We're back in Lily's point of view at this point, and he catches Lily going out for a date with Atlas. And then he finds out that Finding Nemo and like Dory is like a thing between them because Ellen DeGeneres, and he finds out that's why she named her daughter Dory, like her middle name is Dory. Lily, I don't have a screenshot of it, but Lily says, I named her that because she's a strong character. My girl is literally a fish. She's a fish. I'm not saying Dory is like not fun, but I think calling her a strong female character, a strong female lead, is a little bit of a stretch here. But anyway, he gets mad about the Dory thing, predictably. And this is where it's really highlighted that Colleen Hoover is quite literally allergic to calling abuse a bad thing. Because Ryle, okay, let's like rewind for a second. After the first book, Ryle faces no consequences other than losing his wife. He doesn't even lose the right to his child. He just loses the wife. He doesn't lose his job. He doesn't lose his family. He doesn't lose his money, his resources, his stability, nothing. He faces absolutely no consequences for the act of physically abusing and attempting to sexually abuse his wife. Nothing happens. So that's like the first point of allergy. The second is what happens immediately after Ryle like slams away because he's angry about the middle name. Lily says this. She says, I may not be perfect, but I don't deserve to fear for my life every time I make a mistake. Can we point out exactly what mistake she made in giving her daughter a middle name? I don't know. This was just absolutely insane because a mistake? There was no mistake. And abuse is not because of a mistake. It's about control over the person you are abusing. And even if you don't have a reason to make an abuser mad, like if you are somehow the perfect spouse who never messes up ever, the abuser will make an excuse because they want control over you. And so the phrasing of this places the reason for the abuse, the blame for the abuse, on Lily because she made a mistake or made Ryle mad. Like this reasoning and Lily never rectifying this thought made me have a mental breakdown because it means that she thinks this is actually what happens. And that's not how abuse works. I literally cannot put into words how much that is not how abuse works. And it just highlights how many wrong ideas Colleen Hoover has about abuse and how wrongly she is portraying it and the fallout of it in these two books. At literally every turn in these two books, Colleen Hoover is making excuses for Ryle and excusing what he did to Lily instead of calling abuse what it really is, which is unpredictable and inexcusable. She's quite literally allergic to calling abuse something that is not good and making her characters face any sort of consequence for it. And at this point, with this book reaching so many people and influencing so many young girls, this type of representation is not just bad, it's also harmful. It's harmful for those young women to look into this book and see abuse excused so religiously. Like, I'm not even joking right now, but like Colleen Hoover's genuine, literal inability to call Ryle a bad person or stop excusing what he has done or straight up just say, you are abusive, is concerning, especially because this woman was a social worker and potentially had clients at one point. So we jump back over to Atlas and we find out that he started the custody battle between Josh, Sutton, and him. And we find out that Josh really wants to meet his father and like wants to live with his father. Atlas knows that his father is a piece of shit. His father is Tim, the person that kicked him out and is abusive and like is an alcoholic, but he doesn't want to crush Josh's dreams by like telling him all of this. So when Josh says, I'd like to meet my father and go live with him, Atlas is like, okay, I'll help you find him. He doesn't really want to help him find him. It's crazy that he didn't sit him down and be like, listen, this is what I've witnessed Tim do to me. This is what I have witnessed him do to your mother. If you think that he has grown as a person, if after this information I've given you, you still want to visit him, I will go with you, but I will not leave you alone with him. Instead, Atlas is like, yeah, sure, let's go, and then you can live with him. So that's pretty much the only important thing that happens within the next few Atlas chapters. So we jump back to Lily, and we find out that Ryle's temper is flaring again. What a surprise. And he pushes Lily up against the door with a hand to her throat because he gets angry. He wants more time with Emmy. He wants overnights with Emmy. He's angry about Atlas and Lily, like basically the same thing that he's been angry about this entire book. And he then gets drunk that same night and texts her like mildly threatening texts and just like angry, drunken texts. So after this escalation, Lily wants to modify the custody arrangement, not to make it so Ryle cannot see Emmy, by the way. It's just she wants him to only have supervised visits, and still insane. He should not be visiting her at all if you're worried about retaliation. And then she says this about divorce. She says, "You can't snap your fingers and be done with the person you married and divorced. You're stuck with them forever," which is so crazy to me because actually you can be done. Other than legal proceedings, like when your kid needs to go to college and FAFSA, you actually can be done with them. Hope this helps. Lily's talking more to Alyssa about her days with Atlas, and she's like, "Oh, should I be talking to you about Atlas because Ryle is still your brother?" And Alyssa says, "He should have been nicer to you, and then you wouldn't be with another man." Ma'am, nicer? We are talking about the act of abuse, not kindness. The mental gymnastics here deserve an Olympic gold medal, to be totally honest. Things are going well for Lily and Atlas. They're going on dates. They're being very cutesy. They're deciding whether or not they want to move in with each other. They're fucking in the shower. We find out that Atlas is progressing with the custody battle to get Josh, like, full custody of Josh. And then, like, everything's going smoothly until Ryle confronts Lily about the text that he like drunkenly sent her, and he's like, "I'm so sorry, like I was drunk, I didn't mean it." And it just reaffirms to Lily how much he actually hasn't changed despite how much he says he has. And she's like, "Don't worry about it, I sent it to a lawyer." And he's like, "What?" She's like, "Yeah, I sent those texts to a lawyer." Now she's totally bluffing. She didn't send it to a lawyer, even though she very much should have. Ryle immediately gets super upset. He's like, "I can't believe you did that. That was his idea, wasn't it?" And he rushes off to Atlas's restaurant to like go fight him. But then on his way out to like go rush to Atlas and, I don't know, beat the shit out of him, he's like, "Don't forget, Lily, I make more money than you, so I'm gonna automatically win the custody arrangement." That's literally the only excuse, is that Ryle makes more money. That's his only one. That's his one point. This is one win in the custody arrangement battle. And so he goes off to Atlas's restaurant to try and beat the shit out of Atlas. And he gets to the restaurant and Atlas is like, "I'm not going to fight you," which, I'm not going to lie, was kind of sexy. I would have loved to see Atlas beat the shit out of Ryle, but him being more mature and being like, "Dude, I'm not going to fight you. We're just going to talk." I'm not gonna lie, she kind of had me with that one. And Atlas is like, "I need you to just take a second and breathe," after he decks Atlas in the face, because Atlas is like, "I'm not gonna fight back. Like, I'm not gonna give you that win. So we're both just gonna stand here until you can be an adult again." So they don't fight, but Atlas and Ryle have a conversation about how all of this is, in the end, going to hurt Emmy and how Emmy sees him as a father. And it's actually insane that this whole book, which is about girl boss empowerment and like female empowerment, it takes Ryle listening to another man for him to get it through his thick fucking skull that what he is doing is wrong. So this happens, Ryle takes a step back, and Lily and Atlas decide if they should move in together. Spoiler alert, they do end up moving in together. And Lily expresses her concerns over the current custody arrangement and how she wants to go back to court to modify the arrangement. And she says this about her custody arrangement. She says, "I have full custody, but it comes with stipulations. Because of his schedule, I'm required to be flexible, but technically he gets her 2 days a week." All right, couple things on that. One, this is the definition of not having full custody. If you have to give Emmy to Ryle against your will, that is not full custody with stipulations, babe. That's quite literally the definition of joint custody. Then we go straight into this quote, which says, "Once two people agree on a custody arrangement, you can't use past evidence to modify an arrangement. Unfortunately, I never reported him, so I can't use the abuse as a defense at this point." All right, we're going to visit legal land. It's a lot like Candyland, but a lot less fun. And in legal land, especially in the state of Massachusetts, this is just wrong. Like, legally, it's wrong. You absolutely can use past evidence to modify a custody arrangement, especially if you do not feel safe the first time coming through with said evidence. So I found this, which is from a Massachusetts family lawyer, who said, "Substance abuse, physical harm, emotional abuse, and neglect are all potential red flags that could warrant a custody modification. It's important to remember that even if the abusive or negligent behavior is not ongoing, the court may consider past and current evidence in making this decision." Past and current, babe. And then point number 2 on this, even if, for whatever reason, the court would not take past evidence, Ryle has given her new evidence This is what I say when I mean she should have sent those texts to a lawyer. Those texts are red flags. The fact that he pushed her up against a door earlier in the book and had a hand around her throat is new evidence of abusive behavior. She doesn't have to bring the physical abuse that's noted in a medical record in. She has 2 new instances of abusive and red flag behavior that she could bring in to use against him. Even if he has a lot of money, the court can see that this will escalate. If you don't remember, we actually have 2 custody battles going on in this book, so we go from one entirely wrong take on a custody battle to another entirely wrong take into another custody battle. Now, I will say custody for a sibling is much harder to get when both parents are alive, unless both parents sign away their rights to parenthood. And the fact that Tim has been gone for 13 years, basically he signed away his rights, even though it's not legally, it's really Sutton who they need to be fighting. But Josh really wants to live with his father, and so Atlas decides to drive him up to go see him because he's found out where he lives. He lives in Vermont, so it's only like a 4-hour drive. So then Atlas agrees to drive Josh up there. They get there, and Atlas is 100% prepared to just send Josh into the house. Josh is 13, by the way. Meanwhile, Tim is a man who he knows is both an alcoholic and physically abusive, and he's totally fine with just sending a 13-year-old with no defense in there alone. Anyway, Josh realizes that if Tim had wanted him, had wanted to parent him, had wanted to become a father to him, he would have come. And so he's like, actually, I don't want to go in, let's go home, and concedes to having like a relationship with Atlas and letting Atlas basically be his full parent. So then they get home, and Atlas decides to have like a talking to with Sutton to try and convince her to sign away her parental rights and leave Josh in Atlas's care. And he has this dinner, and in the book he's like, oh, I totally intended for this to be a dinner where I say I want you out of our lives, I'm going to cut you off, I don't want you here, and I want full custody of my brother. So Alice invites her over to the restaurant, he makes dinner for her, and he's like, oh, I had this full intention, but now that she's here, I've changed my mind. And what's crazy is that this is a quote from the same chapter. It says, there's this toxic belief that family should stick together simply because they're family, as if this entire book isn't quite literally about this toxic belief. So Atlas has made Sutton dinner, they're talking, and he essentially says, I want full custody of Josh, but I also want you to come to dinner once a week. Like, I want you at whatever sport he wants to be in. I want you to be a part of his life, which he does not include Josh in this decision, and instead wants a woman who has physically abused a boy for 13 years to be a part of his life without any counseling. I don't know what Colleen Hoover's obsession with giving abusers a second chance or not cutting them out of your life is, because it's now prevalent in 2 different abusive situations. And his reasoning for wanting Sutton to be in Josh's life, in his life, is there's a heart in there somewhere. Maybe no one in her life has ever let her know they're appreciative that it still beats. Like, okay, maybe that's true. The 13-year-old she has been physically abusing his entire life should not be the one who tells her he appreciates it. Appreciation at this point would not be letting her in your life. It'd be getting her to Alcoholics Anonymous or another healing group, because AA is like religious or something, or getting her to rehab, or helping her get back on her feet if she'll take it, giving her another chance in that way. Appreciative is not allowing this woman who is physically abusive around her victim without any sort of counseling or supervision. That's not appreciative. That's being dangerous and negligent to the child. But there is a genuine and harmful obsession with giving abusers another chance, and also with not making them face any consequences in both of these books now. So basically Sutton agrees to give Atlas full custody. Atlas and Josh officially move in to the same home together, and then Lily and Atlas also decided to move in together, and so they're getting the house ready for Emerson. They're moving Lily in, and Lily and Ryle's family decide to have an intervention for Ryle because Lily is no longer speaking alone with him, and so the whole family decides to get together as Lily decides this is what's going to happen when it comes to Emerson. This is what's going to happen in the future with our child. They're basically holding an intervention, and Ryle is literally oh my god, an intervention, how could you? Bitch, she could have had your ass in jail She could have pressed charges talking about intervention. You should be happy it's just an intervention because it's the only consequence you have faced so far. And it's not even a real intervention. They don't actually do anything, but it's basically to give Lily like a sense of peace that Ryle won't be mad about her and Atlas anymore, or like even if he is, he can't touch her about it, and Emerson will be in a safer environment. But the whole family gathers for this intervention, including Ryle's parents. And at one point, Lily is glad that Ryle's mother is there because Ryle keeps his behavior in check with his mother around. So I'm grateful for her presence, which disproves quite literally everything Colleen Hoover said about Ryle in the last book, because if he can keep his behavior in check with his mother around, it means he has absolute control over his behavior and what he's doing, which means those rage blackouts that I've already said don't exist definitely don't exist, because she just disproved her entire hypothesis with this one line. She just disproved every single excuse Ryle has ever given with this one line that she probably didn't even think about. Because if he can keep it in check this one time, he can keep it in check all the time. He just chooses not to. It is an autonomous decision for him not to keep it in check and to get so angry. I was so over this book by this point. Thankfully, that is close to the end. So that just about wraps up the end of the book. If you're like, oh my god, nothing happened. Yeah, absolutely nothing happens in this book except for 2 custody battles that are badly informed. Basically, whatever I didn't talk about was Lily and Atlas like going on dates, like getting to know each other, and it's all really boring and dumb, and I didn't like it. So by the end of the book, we actually end on the wedding. So it's been a year, because they move in after 6 months, and then like a year later they get married, and it's all in Atlas's point of view, and basically it's a letter to Lily saying, I'm excited to get married to you, I'm excited for the mistakes we're going to make. Atlas now has full custody over Josh, Lily now has full custody over Emmy, life is going good, and it ends on like that high note. I am finally fucking free of the Colleen Hoover shackles. Please never ask me to do this again. These were some of the worst books I've ever read in my entire life. So I actually went on TikTok like after the first book, because my For You page loves me sometimes and only gives me Colleen Hoover critical TikToks. So I went under the Colleen Hoover tag, expecting it to be a lot of people who are making fun of her shitty ass books. No, it's actually full of real fans. It is full of people who actually enjoy her books. And I just have to ask why. The amount of time that I read these books and spent editing and filming these videos is the amount of time I need people to watch these videos. Please. Oh dear God, please. So I hope you guys enjoyed. The next review will be the one that won the poll. I'm sorry it's not the first one, because A Little Life is quite a bit denser and a lot longer than either of these books. So it's going to take me just a second more to get through it. So I wanted to post this to tide you guys over. I'm very sorry, but I hope you enjoyed my talk about It Starts With Us. If you like this video, do all the clicky stuff, like, subscribe, comment down below, all that fun stuff, and I will see you soon with another video. Bye!